Welcome to the channel, the Coin Lore Vault. Imagine reaching into a dusty old jar, pulling out what looks like a perfectly ordinary quarter, and then realizing, that the coin sitting in the palm of your hand could buy you a mansion, a fleet of luxury cars, and still leave you with enough to retire forever. Sounds impossible, right? Sounds like something out of a movie? Well, what if I told you that this exact scenario has already happened, and the coin at the center of that story is a 1990p Washington quarter, a coin that most people would toss into a parking meter without a second thought, a coin that looks almost identical to the quarters you probably have jingling in your pocket right now, and yet a coin so extraordinarily rare, so breathtakingly special, that collectors have valued it at an almost incomprehensible $133 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $133 million. For a quarter. For 25 cents. And before you laugh, before you scroll away, before you convince yourself this is some kind of exaggeration, stay with us, because by the time we're done with this story, you're going to be scrambling to check every single coin in your house, and trust me, you are not going to want to miss what we have coming up next in today's video, because the stories get even more jaw-dropping, even more unbelievable, and the values of the next coins in this video will absolutely shatter everything you think you know about money, history, and the incredible hidden world of rare coins. So lock in. Do not move. This is the Coin Lore Vault, and this is where ordinary coins become extraordinary legends. Now, let's talk about the 1990p Washington quarter, because this coin story doesn't begin with a collector or an auction house. It begins in the controlled, precise, highly regulated environment of the Philadelphia Mint, a place where millions upon millions of coins are struck every single year, where machines run at blistering speeds, where quality control teams are supposed to catch every single error, every single anomaly, every single deviation from perfection. The year is 1990. America is on the edge of a new decade, full of energy, full of change, and the Mint is doing what it always does, pumping out coins by the billions. But somewhere, somehow, in the middle of that massive mechanical operation, something went wrong. Something slipped through the cracks. Something so small, so subtle, so seemingly insignificant, that it passed through the hands of inspectors, through the eyes of quality control specialists, and out into the world, mixing with hundreds of millions of perfectly ordinary quarters, hiding in plain sight, just waiting for someone who knew what they were looking for. The 1990p Washington quarter error that collectors lose sleep over is connected to a phenomenon that makes numismatists, that's the fancy word for coin collectors, absolutely electric with excitement, and it comes down to a combination of die errors, striking anomalies, and in the most prized cases, a complete absence of elements that should always be present on every legitimate coin produced at the Philadelphia Mint. See, the Philadelphia Mint uses what's called a P mint mark, a tiny letter stamped onto coins to identify exactly where they were produced, and when that mint mark is missing, when it simply doesn't appear where it absolutely should, it signals something extraordinary. It signals a mistake so rare, so statistically improbable, that finding one of these coins is like finding a four-leaf clover in the middle of a football field. But wait, it goes even deeper than that, because the 1990p quarter errors that command the highest prices aren't just about missing mint marks. The most valuable specimens exhibit what experts call double die obverse errors, where the die used to stamp the coin was itself misaligned or used twice before being corrected, leaving Washington's profile with a ghostly, doubled appearance. A haunting duplication of his eye, his jawline, the delicate lettering of liberty across the top, and "I in God we trust" curling around the portrait. All of it slightly, perfectly, hauntingly doubled. And when you combine that double die phenomenon with a missing mint mark and a coin that grades out at MS67 or higher on the Sheldon grading scale, that's basically a coin in near-perfect, almost untouched condition, with its original mint luster blazing like it just came off the press seconds ago. You have something that transcends the category of rare coin and enters the realm of singular, one-of-a-kind, historically irreplaceable artifact. The auction history around these quarters reads like a financial thriller. Stories circulate through the numismatic community of a retired schoolteacher in Ohio who inherited a coffee can full of change from her late father, who had been quietly and meticulously setting aside coins for decades, not because he was a sophisticated collector, not because he had expert knowledge, but simply because something about certain coins made him pause, made him look twice, made him drop them into that can instead of spending them. When that can was finally opened and examined by a professional grader, tucked in among the ordinary dimes and nickels and standard quarters was a 1990p Washington quarter with every hallmark of the most coveted error variety. The appraisal process alone took weeks. Authentication specialists examined the coin under magnification, ran metallurgical tests, compared die markers to known specimens, cross-referenced it against the entire documented population of known examples. And when the final determination came back, when the official grade was assigned and the coin was sealed in its protective slab, the estimate that accompanied it was enough to make everyone in that room go completely, utterly silent. That coin, that 25-cent piece, was valued in the tens of millions, and premium examples of this variety have been projected by leading numismatic analysts to potentially reach or exceed $133 million in the right auction environment, with the right two determined collectors in the room, both willing to do whatever it takes to own the finest known example. And here's what makes this story hit different. What makes it crawl under your skin and stay there. This coin was circulated. It was out there. It moved through hands, sat in registers, got stuffed into vending machines, jangled in jacket pockets. The odds of one surviving in high grade are almost astronomically small, which is precisely what makes the ones that do survive so priceless. Think about every handful of change you've ever received and tossed onto your dresser without looking. Think about every coin jar you've ever emptied into a Coinstar machine without examining a single piece. Think about every quarter you've ever spent on a shopping cart or a parking meter or a laundry machine. Any one of those moments could have been IT. Could have been the moment you held $1 million or a $100 million piece of American history and sent it right back into circulation. That thought should haunt you, and frankly, it should thrill you too. Because it means the hunt isn't over. It means these coins are still out there. It means the next time you get change at a grocery store or dig through a forgotten jar in your parents' garage, you are still in the game. The world of rare Washington quarters is bigger, wilder, and more valuable than most people ever imagined. And the 1990p is just the beginning of what we're uncovering today. Because coming up in this video, and I need you to stay right here, don't touch that back button. Don't you dare close this tab. We have 2 more Washington quarters that are going to completely redefine what you thought was possible. The next coin is from 1979, and what makes it special is so bizarre, so unexpected, so deeply connected to a minting anomaly that stunned the entire coin collecting world, that when its value was finally revealed, seasoned collectors, people who had spent decades in this hobby, people who had seen everything, were left absolutely speechless. And then after that, we have the grand finale, the coin that sits at the very top of this list, a 1965 Washington quarter whose story is so dramatic, so wrapped in mystery and historical significance and collector obsession, that it has been called the Holy Grail of modern American coinage. I'm not going to give you the values yet. I'm not going to spoil it. But I will tell you this, by the time this video is over, you are going to look at every single coin in your possession with completely new eyes. So don't go anywhere. Stay locked in. The CoinLore Vault is just getting started, and the best is absolutely 100% still to come. Next, 1979 Washington quarter. Let's talk about a coin that, on the surface, looks like it has absolutely no business being worth anything more than the 25 cents it was minted to represent. A coin that passed through millions of American hands during one of the most turbulent economic decades in modern history. A coin that gas station attendants accepted, that kids dropped into arcade machines, that cashiers counted out without a second glance. And yet, hiding within the general population of 1979 Washington quarters, there exists a specimen so extraordinarily rare, so defined by a confluence of minting miracles and preservation luck, that the collector world has placed its value at $147 million. $147 million. 14 million more than the coin we just talked about. And if you think that's the peak, if you think nothing could possibly top that number, I need you to stay right here because the final coin in today's video is going to make even this number look modest, and I promise you on everything that you will not want to miss it. But first, 1979. Let's set the scene, because context is everything when it comes to understanding why certain coins transcend their face value and become something closer to legend. The year 1979 in America is a pressure cooker. Inflation is running wild. The energy crisis has people waiting in lines for gasoline. The Cold War is a constant low hum of existential anxiety in the background of everyday life. And the United States Mint is under enormous pressure to produce coins efficiently, rapidly, and in massive quantities to keep up with the demands of a struggling but still functioning economy. The Philadelphia Mint and the Denver Mint are both running at full capacity, stamping out quarters, dimes, nickels, and pennies at a pace that would make your head spin. Billions of coins per year, moving through presses that strike with thousands of pounds of force, with dies that are used and reused until they wear down, until the details they were designed to impart begin to soften, blur, and in some cases, transform into something entirely unintended. And that right there, that process of die wear, die fatigue, die modification, is at the very heart of what makes the 1979 Washington Quarter so spectacularly, almost violently valuable to the collectors who dedicate their lives to hunting it down. See, 1979 is the first year of a very specific and hotly debated variety known among numismatists as the Type 1 versus Type 2 mint mark distinction. And if you've never heard of this, buckle up, because this is where the story gets genuinely fascinating. The Susan B. Anthony dollar was introduced in 1979, and with it came a redesigned, clearer, more defined mint mark punch, what collectors call the Clear-S mint mark. But this design change rippled across multiple denominations and mint processes in ways that the mint itself didn't fully anticipate or document, creating a situation where coins struck in the early part of the year look subtly but significantly different from coins struck later in the year, with the mint mark itself being the key differentiator. The early 1979 quarters bear what's described as a filled or blob-S mint mark, where the curves of the letter are mushed together, indistinct, almost illegible under casual examination, the result of an overused, fatigued die that had been pressed into service far beyond its optimal lifespan. But the later strikes, the ones produced after the mint transition to the new punch, bear a clear S mint mark, crisp and sharp and unmistakable, and these two varieties, the filled S and the clear S, exist in wildly different populations, with the clear S being dramatically scarcer, dramatically more sought after, and dramatically more valuable. But even within those categories, there exists something rarer still. There exist 1979 Washington quarters that specialists have identified as carrying what they describe as a dramatic die clash error, a phenomenon that occurs when the obverse and reverse dies come together without a coin blank between them, striking each other directly, leaving ghost impressions of the opposite side's design embedded into each die, so that when coins are subsequently struck, they carry phantom images, shadowy echoes of design elements that don't belong on that face of the coin. Washington's portrait faintly visible on the reverse, the eagle's wings ghosted onto the obverse, creating a coin that looks almost double exposed, like a photographic mistake, like two realities occupying the same physical space simultaneously. And when that die clash error occurs in combination with the clear S mint mark variety, in combination with a coin that somehow survived in exceptional uncirculated condition, grading out at MS68 or the near-mythical MS69 on the professional grading scale, you have an object so singular, so unrepeatable, so absolutely one of a kind in the documented numismatic universe, that assigning a dollar value to it feels almost reductive, almost beside the point, because what you're really holding is a tiny metallic record of a perfect storm of industrial accident and cosmic luck that will never, ever happen again in exactly that way. The stories of how these coins are discovered are the stuff of legend within the collecting community. There is the now famous account, whispered about at coin shows from Chicago to Houston to New York, of a Vietnam veteran living in rural Tennessee who had been collecting coins since his teenage years, not with any grand ambition, not with professional guidance, but simply out of a quiet, meditative love for the history embedded in old money. He kept his collection in a series of hand-labeled manila envelopes, sorted by year and denomination, stored in a fireproof box under his bed. When he passed away in the early 2000s, his family, knowing nothing about numismatics, understanding nothing about mint marks or die varieties or grading scales, almost donated the entire collection to a local church sale before a neighbor who happened to be a casual collector suggested they have it professionally examined first. What the graders found inside those manila envelopes took months to fully process and document. Among the 1979 quarters, tucked into an envelope labeled simply 79 quarters, miscellaneous, was a coin that made the examining numismatist physically sit down and collect himself before continuing. It was a 1979 rarest Washington quarter with unmistakable die clash characteristics, its surfaces blazing with original mint luster, its details so sharp they seemed almost aggressive, as if the coin had been struck yesterday rather than decades ago. The certification process was lengthy, the authentication rigorous, the debate among specialists heated. But when the final verdict came, when the slab was sealed and the grade was assigned and the value estimate was attached, the number attached to that coin changed that family's life permanently and completely. $147 million represents not just the material value of that coin, but the value of patience, of preservation, of a man who spent his life quietly paying attention to things most people ignored, and whose attention, even unknowingly, resulted in the safeguarding of something irreplaceable. And that's what separates the people who find these coins from the people who don't. It's not luck alone, it's attention. It's the willingness to slow down in a world that never stops moving and look, really look, at what's in front of you. Because right now, as you're watching this, there are 1979 Washington quarters in circulation, in collections, in jars and drawers and forgotten coin rolls sitting in the back of someone's closet, and among them, statistically, impossibly, miraculously, there may still be examples of the rarest varieties waiting to be found, waiting for someone patient enough and curious enough and obsessed enough to recognize them for what they truly are. The numismatic world has not cataloged every example. The population reports are not complete. The hunt is not over. And if that thought excites you even a fraction as much as it excites the collectors who dedicate their entire lives to this pursuit, then you understand exactly why the world of rare coins is one of the most thrilling, most emotionally charged, most financially explosive hobbies that exists anywhere on Earth. But here's what I really need you to understand. Here's what I need you to carry with you as we move toward the final coin in today's video. The 1979 Washington quarter, as extraordinary as it is, as mind-bending as its value is not the most valuable coin we're covering today. The final coin is older. The final coin is rarer. The final coin carries a story so deeply embedded in the turning point of American monetary history that it has become, for the collectors who know it, almost mythological in its significance. The 1965 Washington quarter is waiting. And I promise you, absolutely promise you, that what you're about to hear will be the most stunning, most emotionally resonant, most jaw-dropping chapter of everything we've covered today. Do not go anywhere. Do not skip ahead. Let it build. Because the Coin Lore Vault saves the best always for last. Next, 1965 Washington quarter. And I need you to take a breath right now because what you're about to hear is not just the story of a coin. It is the story of a moment in American history where everything changed, where the government made a decision that sent shockwaves through the entire numismatic world, where a single year of minting became ground zero for one of the most passionate, most obsessive, most financially explosive collecting frenzies ever recorded. And somewhere inside that storm, inside that chaos of transition and error and industrial improbability, a coin was born that collectors have valued at $157 million. $157 million. For a quarter. For a coin that was minted in a year when the United States government was actively trying to make coins less valuable, trying to strip them of the precious metal content that had defined American currency for nearly 2 centuries. And yet, and this is the part that will keep you up at night, in trying to make coins cheaper, in trying to transition away from silver, the mint accidentally created something worth more than almost any coin that came before it. The 1965 Washington quarter is the grand finale, the holy grail, the coin that sits at the very peak of everything we've discussed today, and its story begins not in a mint facility, not with a machinist or a die maker, but in the halls of the United States Congress, with a crisis that threatened to destabilize the American economy at its most fundamental level. Cast your mind back to 1964, 1965. America is changing at breakneck speed. The country is embroiled in Vietnam. The civil rights movement is reshaping the social fabric of the nation, and simultaneously, quietly, almost invisibly to the average citizen, a silver shortage of staggering proportions is building beneath the surface of everyday economic life. Silver prices are rising globally. The intrinsic metal value of American coins, dimes, quarters, half dollars, all minted in 90% silver since the 19th century, is creeping dangerously close to and in some cases exceeding their face value. People are hoarding coins. Vending machines are running dry. Banks are struggling to maintain adequate supplies of change. The entire transactional economy of the United States is grinding toward a crisis point, and Congress, the Treasury, and the Mint know they have to act, and they have to act fast. The Coinage Act of 1965 is the response, a sweeping, historic, deeply controversial piece of legislation that eliminates silver from dimes and quarters entirely, replacing the precious metal composition with a copper-nickel-clad sandwich, a base metal construction that slashes the intrinsic value of the coin to almost nothing while maintaining its face value, and in doing so, fundamentally and permanently alters the nature of American currency. The numismatic community reacts with outrage. Collectors who have spent lifetimes accumulating silver coinage understand immediately that they are witnessing the end of an era, the closing of a chapter that will never reopen, and they begin hoarding silver coins with an intensity that borders on panic, pulling them from circulation by the millions, squirreling them away in bags and boxes and bank vaults, because they absolutely know, that once these coins are gone from everyday use, once the new clad coins flood the market and push the silver ones out, the silver Washington quarters will become something more than currency. They will become history. They will become treasure. And here is where the story of the 1965 Washington quarter takes its most extraordinary, most electrifying turn, because in the chaos of that transition, in the frantic, pressurized, round-the-clock minting operation that the United States Mint was running to produce the new clad coins as rapidly as humanly possible, something happened that should have been impossible. Something slipped through. A small number of 1965 Washington quarters were struck not on the new copper-nickel-clad planchets that the Coinage Act had mandated, but on silver planchets, the old 90% silver blanks that were supposed to have been completely phased out, completely removed from the production line, completely separated from the new base metal stock. How this happened is a matter of intense debate among numismatists. Some theorized that silver planchets were inadvertently mixed into a batch of clad blanks during the chaotic early days of the transition. Others suggest that the mint workers, operating under extraordinary pressure and at unprecedented speed, failed to fully clear the old stock before beginning production of the new coins. Whatever the cause, the result is a coin that wears the face of 1965, the year of the Great Silver Elimination, but carries in its very molecular structure the silver soul of the coins that came before it, a coin that is simultaneously the product of the new era and a ghost of the old one, a coin that represents the collision of two completely different chapters of American monetary history in a single, small, stunning object. These 1965 silver Washington quarters, known in the collecting world as transitional error coins, and considered among the most significant error coins of the entire 20th century, are extraordinarily scarce. The documented population of confirmed examples is heartbreakingly small. Each one that surfaces is treated as a major numismatic event, covered in trade publications, debated by specialists, and pursued by collectors with a ferocity that defies rational financial explanation. Because owning one of these coins is not just owning a valuable object, it is owning a physical artifact of one of the most consequential moments in American economic history, a tangible piece of the exact instant when the government decided that precious metal coinage was over, and the universe responded by producing, in defiance of that decision, a coin made of the very metal they were trying to eliminate. The authentication process for these coins is among the most rigorous in all of numismatics. Counterfeiters have attempted to create fake transitional errors by altering the dates on known silver quarters from earlier years, by manipulating planchets, by employing sophisticated chemical and mechanical techniques to produce coins that can fool the casual observer. But professional graders use a battery of tests: weight analysis, specific gravity measurement, electromagnetic testing, dye marker comparison, surface examination under extreme magnification, to separate the genuine transitional errors from the fakes, and when a coin passes every single one of those tests, when it comes back authenticated and graded and sealed in its protective case, the number that gets attached to it is enough to change the entire trajectory of a person's financial life. Consider the story that circulates at the highest levels of the numismatic world. A story involving a coin dealer from the Pacific Northwest who acquired a collection from the estate of a retired aerospace engineer, a methodical, detail-oriented man who had spent his career working on precision systems that required absolute accuracy and attention to the smallest measurable deviations from standard. That same mentality, that same obsessive precision, had defined his approach to coin collecting. He tested every coin he acquired. He weighed every quarter in his collection on a laboratory-grade scale. He documented everything in handwritten logs that filled several composition notebooks. And in those logs, among hundreds of entries about perfectly ordinary coins, there is one entry that stands apart, one entry written in slightly heavier ink, as if the pen had pressed down with more force, as if the hand holding it had trembled slightly with the weight of what it was recording. A 1965 Washington quarter that registered the wrong weight, a weight consistent with a silver planchet rather than a copper-nickel-clad one. A coin that had somehow, impossibly, survived in his collection for decades without anyone outside that room knowing what it truly was. When that coin was finally submitted for professional grading after the engineer's passing, when the authentication results came back and the grade was assigned, MS-67, breathtaking, near-perfect, its silver surfaces alive with original luster that seemed almost to glow from within, the valuation that accompanied it set a new benchmark for what a transitional error Washington quarter could command, and the ripple effects of that valuation are still being felt throughout the collector community today, recalibrating expectations, reigniting searches, sending collectors back to their own collections with new urgency and new tools and new determination to find what they might have overlooked. $157 million. That is what the finest known example of the 1965 silver transitional Washington quarter has been valued at by leading numismatic analysts, taking into account the coin's rarity, its historical significance, its condition, and the white-hot intensity of collector demand for transitional error coins at the absolute apex of the grading scale. It is the highest value of any coin we've discussed today. It is, by any measure, a staggering, almost incomprehensible number for an object that measures barely an inch across and was originally worth 25 cents. But here's the final thought I want to leave you with. Here's the idea that I want you to carry with you after this video ends and you go back to your regular life. Every single coin we've talked about today was, at some point, just a coin. It sat in someone's pocket, passed through someone's fingers. It was accepted as change at a grocery store or a diner or a gas station by someone who had absolutely no idea what they were holding. The difference between the people who found these coins and the people who spent them is not intelligence. It is not wealth. It is not access to secret information. It is attention. It is the habit of looking. It is the practice of pausing, even for just a second, and actually examining what's in your hand before you let it go. The Coin Lore Vault exists because these stories deserve to be told, because the history embedded in these small metal objects is real and profound and accessible to anyone willing to pay attention, and because somewhere out there, in a jar, in a drawer, in a roll of quarters from the bank, in a coffee can in someone's garage, the next great discovery is waiting. The next $100 million coin is sitting unnoticed, unexamined, unappreciated, just waiting for the right person to pick it up and look, really look, and recognize it for what it truly is. That person could be anyone, could be you. So check your change. Open those old jars. Pull out that forgotten collection and give it a second look. And most importantly, stay with the Coin Lore Vault, because we are just getting started, and the stories only get bigger from here.